Part 10. Lost. Colton had to drag himself up the steps to where he had been knocked off. He went through an adjacent corridor, assuming that Alea and the Overseer headed the same way. He leaned against the walls for support as his legs wobbled with every step. Keep going. Just keep going, he told himself. If another one of these creatures were to attack, he'd be a goner. The tunnels of the rock seemed even darker without the assistance of the face mask. Then he arrived at a split that led to two tunnels leading in different directions. He took a step forward, kicking something that clattered on the ground. Barely visible against the rocky floor was a syringe filled with a black liquid labeled Psycho X. He couldn't believe that it was there. Even after he shook his head and rubbed his eyes, it was still there. It was a blessing. He grabbed it, held it up to get a better look at it, and then kissed it. Alea and the Overseer must have left it here for him. Or could it be the same one they were going to use on the pilot? How did it get here, he wondered, but didn't dwell on it. He stuck the needle into his arm and took a deep breath as his pain began to numb, his heart rate sped up, and his energy came back. Feeling revitalized, he continued through one of the tunnels. Alea! Max! He called, but no one answered. He searched through the caverns for several minutes, but there were no other signs of them. Then he arrived at a weird cave at the end of the tunnel. As he walked into the cave, it was illuminated by pillars of fire, keeping it hot inside. Colton felt the Psycho X sweating out his system. He saw a massive shadow approaching in the darkness, so he hid behind one of the fire pillars. A massive brown creature with stone-like skin stalked into the cave. It had to be at least 3 times larger than the others. It had long spikes protruding out of its shoulders that protected its fleshy face, and tentacles slithering in, out, and around the body. Colton was in no shape to fight the behemoth, so he waited for it to pass. As it made its way through the cave, unaffected by the heat, Colton veered to its blind side. He was almost out of the cave when he came across a stone table structure. A person was bound to it by the same slithering tentacles that were part of the monster. "Colton?" the Overseer cried out. "Max, how did you get like this?" Colton said. "Where's Alea?" The Overseer nodded upwards. Colton looked up to find Alea hanging upside down from the roof of the cave. Her body was wrapped in tentacles and her face had been seared to the bone. "Colton," the Overseer cried, "I'm so sorry. I... The Overseer tried to move, but the tentacles tightened, pinning him to the stone. "Max, I'm going to get you out of here. Hold on." "No, don't," the Overseer warned, but Colton already had his knife and cut at the tentacles. The tentacles vibrated and the creature stopped immediately. It turned to Colton, locking his eyes on him, and roared. The creature stuck its hand out towards Colton, and tentacles burst from its body. They slithered in the air and left him no choice but to leave the Overseer behind. Colton ran. Tentacles came from everywhere, bursting through the tunnel walls, from the cave ceiling, and even from underneath his feet. They stopped him at every twist and turn, forcing him to change directions. He ignored the incoming pain in his ribs and fought to keep his legs moving, sprinting at full speed as the Psycho X began to wear off. He made a wrong turn somewhere, arriving at a point where he had to climb upward. With all his injuries, the climb was that more enduring. Tentacles encroached on him, but he made it to another tunnel. He looked down, spotting the gigantic beast below. He ran down a corridor, taking every twist and turn he could, hoping to get away. When he stopped for a breather, as the tentacles were no longer behind, a faceless black creature appeared in front of him. He fired the last of his bullets at it, but they did nothing, falling uselessly to the ground. The black creature's hands melded into blades. It roared, slashing at Colton, but he dodged it and got behind the beast. It raised its blades in the air to strike again when a tentacle burst through its chest. It let out a horrid screech as tentacles started to burst through it. The black creature then changed its form, turning into a liquid substance and falling to the floor. Colton flinched at the sight of the pilot's lifeless body, only held up by the tentacles that protruded through it. The tentacles pulled the pilot into the darkness. A roar followed. The black liquid creature sluggishly headed for Colton. He threw his gun at it and then continued running. He ran into a cave that had no exit, a dead end. There was something eerily familiar about this cave. An empty cache with broken equipment lay turned over on the ground. Bullets and shell casings were scattered about, and there was a large amount of debris. He looked up. There was a hole in the cave roof that stretched to the surface. He could see the black, red, and orange clouds that covered the sky. He fell to his knees, unable to fight off the pain anymore, looking up through the hole. "Maria, I love you," he said. A sharp pain pierced through his back and out from his chest. He looked down, and a tentacle protruded from his body. All went black.